What is behind this door? It's been sealed for over 2 decades, and we still don't know the mystery behind the Dark Iron Highway and what's standing behind the giant known as Baelgar. Now, this gate is as mysterious as the OG Grimbatol, but what was the intentions? What were the designs? What were the plans for the Dark Iron Highway and the mystery that it is? Now, Vanilla WoW is full of these. So many places, locations, lore, and storylines that started in Vanilla WoW or pre-alpha WoW, and then were either scrapped, removed, or just forgotten and abandoned. And it's one of the biggest things about Vanilla WoW that people wish were finished. All these amazing locations and the stories that they contain. And the biggest one is the Dark Iron Highway. Now, I'm going to cover the theories people have, some conclusions that people have found from other locations, and the overall theme and belief behind and around the Black Rock Mountain area and the Dark Iron Dwarves. We have to give some lore and story context to Black Rock Mountain and why the dwarves built this massive underground city, why they're being controlled by Ragnaros, why Neltharion is inside, and why all those shenanigans are happening. Go back a long time ago, in a time long before Azeroth looked like Azeroth. The dwarves were ruled by the Anvilmar clan, one dynasty, one empire, the Wildhammer, the Dark Iron, and the Bronzebeard. Till High King Anvilmar had a heart attack, and then a civil war ensued, and the Dark Iron Dwarves said that we're the best, we deserve to rule everything, and then they lost, and they lost multiple times. And then long story short, the Dark Iron Dwarves led to Grimbatol becoming Grimbatol as it is because they ended up nuking it with the Void, the Wildhammer had to flee, yada yada yada. We get to where we are now. The Dark Iron Dwarves, in losing the war against the Bronzebeards, and then the Wildhammer decided we're going to summon and enslave an elemental, and they summoned Ragnaros, and then Ragnaros fucking blew up their city, and then they were forced to become essentially slaves to the Fire Lord himself. Now, I have to summarize that this is a very short summary of Dwarven lore. I skipped a lot of things just so this video wasn't 3.5 hours long. We then go back into Blackrock Mountain. We have BRD, and it's one of the biggest, no, it is actually the biggest dungeon ever made. It is ginormous. In fact, Molten Core itself was a wing of Blackrock Depths initially. It was not a raid. It was turned into a raid because they had to delay Blackwing Lair. Now, like I said, Blackrock Mountain was huge. 2 raids, essentially 4 dungeons, but technically 2 dungeon instances. And then in Cataclysm, they revamped it and added more things, yada yada yada. But in Classic, the original idea behind Blackrock Mountain was this massive interconnected super city, super state that was meant to be packed full of content for multiple phases. In fact, behind Baelgar, behind the Dark Iron Highway's gate, was likely meant to be another wing of Blackrock Depths. There are quests pointing towards opening and going in there, but again, the devs ran out of time, and one of the focus of the devs was always going forward and not really looking back. That's why we got TBC, and then Wrath of the Lich King instead of finishing off Azeroth and the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor. So let's talk OG ideas. One of the first things, and this one is a very old, very scrap plot point and doesn't actually exist, but the Dark Iron Highway was likely meant to connect not just towards Grimbatol, but also towards the Bronzebeards and Dun Moreau. We were likely meant to connect all 3 dwarven cities together with one ginormous highway. And this does make some sense lore-wise because you have the Hall of Thanes underneath Ironforge, and in there are sealed gates and doors, and that likely did lead to the underground dwarven empire of old. Now again, Blackrock Mountain was built after, not before the Dwarven Civil War. But that doesn't mean that the dwarves didn't have interconnected highway during the era of the Anvilmars. Now, the reason I expect that this got scrapped was because there was a lot of work, it was a lot of effort to make all of this connect and feel good and feel like a well-done storyline. We know from right now that Grimbatol was meant to be just like Blackrock Mountain, another giga structure, multiple raids, multiple dungeons, just a big area. But just like that, this was all scrapped. Now keep in mind that if you look at the OG maps of the Eastern Kingdoms from the second Warcraft game and pre-alpha World of Warcraft, all 3 dwarven cities were very close to each other. Ironforge was literally right here, then you had Blackrock Mountain to the south, and then to the northeast you had Grimbatol. Now, all 3 city-states likely had a highway connecting them. But that story is not coming back, but it might for Classic Plus. And I kind of do hope they go that route, because I would love to discover more of the underground horrors, the things that are sealed away that the dwarves don't talk about. Because remember, the dwarves diggy dig. That's what they're really good at. Look at the War Within and what the Earthen have done. They dug a highway literally kilometers underground into places long forgotten and long unseen. So let's talk the first concept that I could think of that is very realistic for what is behind Baelgar. The very first one is very likely another raid or another dungeon wing that turned into another raid. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, Blackrock Mountain was meant to be ginormous. Multiple dungeons, multiple raids. And we did get a lot of that, but so much of it is scrapped and forgotten about. There are multiple paths and doors and sections within the Blackrock Mountain ecosystem that could potentially lead to other places. What kind of raid or dungeon would this wing have been? It likely would have been some kind of military district or maybe another civilian district, because we already went to the throne room. We killed the leader of the Dark Iron Forge. We killed the leader of the Dark Iron Dwarves, Thorathian. And then, you know, Moira and all that stuff happens, and then his son comes back in retail. A whole shebang. But the raid and dungeon itself likely would have been more dwarven themed, because we already have Ragnaros as a titan, but we have the elemental guarding the gate, which means that Ragnaros didn't want the dwarves going in that direction, or was Baelgar defending against what could have been coming from the other side of that gate? But as I did say, we know for a fact that they had plans to expand it. The gate was able to be opened technically. You can go behind it and you can see things. Well, it's a blocked off wall, but you can see that the idea there was it was meant to be a portal connecting to something else, just like Molten Core connects to Blackrock Depths. And personally, I think this was meant to be an elemental raid. Not like Ragnaros, where he's just hidden there inside the core, regenerating his power, but more like the dwarves building a big structure, maybe to summon an old god or summon creations. Again, we know right now that in the lore, Ragnaros serves the old gods, and he hates it, but he serves it. He does what he has to. And we saw this in Cataclysm with the Twilight Highlands and the Firelands raid in Hyjal and all that stuff. Ragnaros and the elementals serve the old gods. So the dwarves having a whole area, maybe area of worship, an area of war, a citizen area where there's corrupted dwarves who have been infected by the elements or the void. Because even in the current lore, Grimbatol at the very depths of it has Xal'atath's blade, and Xal'atath herself was, quotation marks, technically the cause of the corruption of Grimbatol. Technically, adventurers go and get Xal'atath's blade, remove it from there. Things happen, a priest holds it, and Xal'atath gets in the hands of the champion and legion, and then the lore from there is now retail. But I've talked on the concept of a raid or a dungeon, and that, like I said, is the realistic concept. That's likely what it was meant to be. But I want to talk more about right now the Dark Iron Highway as a connecting structure from Ironforge all the way to Grimbatol. Because in my opinion, the ultimate version, the ultimate discovery should have been the path to Grimbatol. There should be an alliance entrance inside Ironforge. You know, you can go down to the Hall of Thanes. There's a door you can open. It takes you to like a little hub area. And the Horde should have their own entrance somewhere else. I'm not sure where they'd put it. Just put it somewhere. There's plenty of locations that the Dark Iron Dwarves or the Anvilmar Dwarves could have built connections to this ancient highway. That should have been a connection to Grimbatol because, like I said, the Void. The Dark Iron Highway, if it was not an ancient highway built by the Anvilmars, should have been a new highway being built by the Dark Iron Dwarves at the behest and command of Ragnaros and the Old Gods connecting to Grimbatol. And like I said, there is plenty of lore reasons to support this. The dwarves are great builders. Like I said, they dig and they're really good at digging. They can craft ginormous mountains, structures, cities. They are masters of engineering. They are at the pinnacle of construction. They're just regular dwarves in every fantasy. Look at the shit dwarves build in any media you look at. And it would have made perfect sense that Baelgar was guarding the way to Grimbatol. There should have been another portal there that leads to the Dark Iron Highway. The Dark Iron Highway should have been its own dungeon instance, you know, maybe a dungeon pathway, like a long dungeon that just keeps trekking onwards and onwards. And then eventually at the end of that, it leads to a raid in Grimbatol, and it would have been a perfect connection and would have expanded the Dwarven lore and the Old God lore and the Elemental lore. Now, they would have had to bullshit some way for the Horde to be connected to this, because the Horde is mostly connected to Neltharion and the Old Horde, or the True Horde as they like to call it. So there are plenty of ways they could make this work. The Dragonmaw still control Grimbatol, and they could have been void corrupted at this point, which means the Horde now have to go and put down the Dark Iron Dwarves dwarves, the Dragonmaw, the True Horde, and keep having all these connections. So there are many ways for them to make the Alliance and the Horde connect story-wise and storyline ways into making everybody go towards the Dark Iron Highway and Grim Batol. And to be fair, Blizzard has essentially ignored Blackrock Mountain since Cataclysm. And even in Cataclysm, they didn't really touch it that much, aside from adding another raid for Neltharion and the Black Dragons, because they like Black Dragons a lot. Well, not really, they kind of fucked up Rathian storyline, but that's a different question. For Classic Plus, or a future version of retail, please go back and finish off these locations. We are going to Midnight in 12.0. Midnight should talk more, not just about the elves, but the Dwarven Empire of old, and the human empires of old. And they're clearly leading that direction with the Arathi in retail, the Arathi Empire, Underground, and Hallowfall. So all that stuff does connect. But in Classic Plus, or the future of Classic, or whatever they do, they should keep on expanding in the Dark Iron Dwarves, the Dwarven Empire, and all that means for Classic and its future. Because honestly, BRD is one of the best designed raid locations and dungeon locations in the entirety of Warcraft's history. Molten Core, not so much, but Blackwing Lair, Upper and Lower Blackrock Spire, Blackrock Depths, immaculate design, incredibly well done, and just genuinely top tier content. And Blizzard need to do more of that. We need more mega dungeons, mega raids, multi-dungeon mega location. And that is the mystery behind the Dark Iron Highway and Baelgar. It's not the perfect answer, but it's the best answer we have until Blizzard decides to get its head out of its ass and finish this OG storyline that they have left abandoned for 20 goddamn years. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you liked it. If you did, like and subscribe. If you hated it, subscribe and hate every single video. Be a dedicated hater. Thank you all. Urban Heart out.